Sigmund Freud mapped the human mind to understand his patients. You, however, took up your uncle's legacy and used it to influence the decisions of millions of people without them even realizing it. You were born in Vienna in 1891. Your name is Edward Bernays. Your mother, Anna, is Sigmund Freud's sister. Your father, Ely, is the brother of Freud's wife, Martha. In other words, you are the double nephew of the man who mapped the darkest recesses of the human mind. This blood connection is no coincidence. It is the genetic code of your future career. A year after you were born, your family decided to move to America. New York swallows you up and raises you. At your father's urging, you begin studying agriculture at Cornell University. But the soil isn't even within your sphere of interest. What truly interests you is how human behavior works. Upon graduation, you're assigned to journalism. You may seem like an ordinary writer, but you're not. Your first opportunity at a young age comes from your own family. You want to bring your famous uncle's works from Vienna to America. In 1919, you translate Freud's lectures into English and have them published. Your uncle is not pleased with this translation and becomes furious, but you don't even care. In your view, this project will bring your uncle fame and significant financial gain. For you, the real issue here isn't science. For you, the issue is how to turn a name into money. You make your money and go your own way. That's your thing. When World War I breaks out, you're summoned to Washington. Your task is simple: to convince the American people to support the war. After all, you're Freud's nephew, and like your uncle, you understand human psychology well, but you use this knowledge in a different way. You work on the Wilson administration's propaganda committee, and there you see the truth that will change your life. Masses are governed not by logic, but by emotion. A nation can be steered in any direction with the right words. The war ends. But the lesson you've learned doesn't end. It's just beginning. In peacetime, the word propaganda has become tainted. No one wants to hear you. You find a solution to this problem. You change the word. From now on, your work is called public relations consulting. You declare yourself the world's first public relations counsel. This is not merely a change in title. It is the birth certificate of a new industry. And beneath that document, there is a single signature. The 1920s arrive. You are now running a small office in New York. But what you sell is something different from what other businessmen sell. You don't sell products, you sell persuasion. You charge by the hour for your consulting services. This is an unusual model for most wealthy people of your time. You have no factory, you have no land, you have no mine. You have only one thing, a key to the human mind, and you rent out that key to the highest bidder. Your first major victory is with soap. You want to sell Procter & Gamble's Ivory soap. You don't run direct ads. You have a better idea in mind. Instead of direct advertising, you organize a national soap carving contest for children. Art teachers, schools, and newspapers are drawn into the effort. Millions of families become part of an advertising campaign without even realizing it. The product sells without its name ever being mentioned. This becomes your signature approach. Not direct sales, but indirect siege. You produce content that looks like news, but is actually advertising. Newspapers print it, thinking it's free content. A three-way win-win situation emerges. The public remains unaware. With this idea, you've successfully managed the strategy to drive strong sales. General Electric comes knocking on your door. Then come the car companies. You transform the car from a mere means of transportation into a status symbol. Next comes Calvin Coolidge's election campaign. You seat a stern and boring president at the same dinner table as famous actors. The newspapers publish photos of the scene. The public begins to find the stern and boring president more likable thanks to these photos. Even politics has now become part of your laboratory. During the same period, you work on campaigns encouraging ordinary Americans to buy stocks. The public's money thus turns into capital for large corporations. The winner is once again the man behind the scenes, that is, you. In 1929, you play your boldest move yet. American Tobacco wants women to consume this controversial product in public places so that profits will rise as the number of smokers increases, but the public won't allow it. That's when you step in. At an Easter parade, you hand out that era's forbidden habit to young women. You task your secretary, whose identity you keep secret, with organizing the women. You tell the press that women's rights advocates will light the torch of freedom. The company's name is never mentioned. The next day, women's freedom becomes associated with a tobacco brand. A habit is transformed into a matter of identity. Sales skyrocket. So does your fortune. In the early 1930s, the Great Depression hits, factories close, and workers are left on the streets. But your business doesn't stop. It diversifies. The wealthy know that a crisis is the real opportunity. Even in times of crisis, there's a way to sell things to people. Managing fear. You provide trust counseling to banks and insurance companies. Panic is an emotion, and emotions are your area of expertise. In 1934, a tobacco giant's packaging is green, and the brand wants to change the color, but fears losing its female customers. Your solution is to manipulate fashion. You see adapting fashion to the color green as a more logical and easier approach than changing the packaging color. You organize green-themed balls for society ladies, whisper to fashion magazines that green is the color of the season, and thus the manipulation begins to work. Within a few months, green takes its place at the pinnacle of American fashion. This campaign, which appears to have nothing to do with the product, is actually a way to get society to accept a company's packaging decision. In your own words, you call this the engineering of consent, guiding people while making them believe they're acting of their own free will. As the years go by, your client list grows. Everyone becomes aware of how skillfully you manipulate the public. CBS, radio stations, more car companies, banks, insurance giants. But your real power lies in the fact that people aren't even aware of it. You're not on stage. You're pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Your name doesn't appear in the newspapers, but your influence seeps into every dinner table, every ballot box, every store window. No one sees you. Everyone experiences your work. In the late 1940s, you meet your biggest and darkest client. The United Fruit Company, which owns vast tracts of land in Guatemala, virtually controls the region's economy single-handedly. The railroads, ports, and telegraph lines all belong to the same company. But this monopoly is under threat. The country's new government is embarking on land reform, planning to distribute unused land to the peasants. The company's lands are at the top of the list. This is exactly where you step in and take charge. You launch a large-scale campaign to convince the American press and public to view the Guatemalan government as a regional threat. Journalists are hosted, trips to the country are organized, reports are prepared, and a narrative is patiently constructed. The same concerns are repeatedly highlighted in the pages of major newspapers. Shortly thereafter, there is a change in government in Guatemala. A company's commercial interest has transformed into public perception, which determines the fate of a nation. For Bernays, this is just another client file. Conscience isn't included on the bill. Your wealth will never look like that of a Rockefeller or a Rothschild. You have no factory, mine, or bank. But you are the one who processes the most valuable raw material of your time, the human mind. It accumulates through hourly rates, consulting contracts, and lifelong client relationships. These manipulations you carry out and the consulting services you provide are more than enough to make you wealthy. You write books, your works, crystallizing public opinion and propaganda, become the sacred texts of your profession. Among those who read them are the shadowy figures who, a few decades later, will steer the masses in Europe. You'll never take pride in this connection, but you'll never be able to escape it either. As you grow older, you'll begin to feel disgusted by the industry you created. An art form you once controlled single-handedly has now been devalued by thousands of agencies, turning into a cheap, low-quality commodity. The pleasure you derived from being the sole figure at the top was what truly made you feel good. Everyone imitates your techniques, but no one possesses or can possess your discipline. This is the natural end of power. A monopoly is not permanent. Imitation always wins. Yet you still did the best you could in this industry you built over such a long time. As you approach your 100th birthday, you wish the public relations profession were licensed and governed by a code of ethics. Your colleagues won't listen to you. You created the monster, and now the monster lives independently of you. Even in your 90s, you're still working. You charge thousands of dollars an hour for client consultations. Your goal isn't to make money. You want that money as a symbol of your power. Your loneliness is a byproduct of that power. You have admirers around you, but no one is truly your equal. Your wife, Doris Fleischman, works by your side for years, shares your ideas, builds the same campaigns in the same office, and meets with the same clients. But throughout her career, her name always remains in the shadow of yours. History prefers to remember a single man, not the partnership. March 1995. In your own home in Massachusetts, you're 103 years old. Just a few days before you close your eyes on this long life, you meet with one final client. Your consulting work continues until your very last breath. When you step off the stage forever, most people don't know your name, but the system you created lives on in every advertisement, every political campaign, every brand launch. Your legacy is not a building, not a list of fortunes, not a name engraved on a medal. You are the man who sold the invisible. You are the man who taught how to sell an intangible commodity at the highest price. Others accumulated land, gold, and stocks. You, however, accumulated only one thing: the power to decide what millions of people will think. And today, behind every screen and every advertisement, your technique is still at work. No one notices it, just as you intended.